your word association is the metaverse. So, Kyle, why don't you start us off?
Well, when I think metaverse, I think of the Oculus, so I go right to Meta, the old Facebook group side of it. So virtual reality, Ready Player One, if you want a movie genre side of it, that's where I go.
Perfect.
I'm Todd Sorg. I am CIT's Chief Operations Officer and CISO. Kyle used more than one word, so mine was going to be Ready Player One, and I have no backup.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Tara. I am our Marketing and Business Development Manager for CIT, and I have two words with my word association would be endless possibilities.
Hey guys, I'm Nate. I'm our Director of Cybersecurity. You'll hear my opinion real quick because my word is going to be a joke. So we'll come back to that later.
Good morning. My name is Scott Patsy. I'm the Manager of Strategic Engagement, and my word association is horses. And the reason why I say horses is because when the first Model T rolled off the line, everybody said, "What are we going to do with all these horses?" And they poo-pooed the Model T. And of course, look where we are today.
We
Hi,
still
everyone.
have
My
horses.
name's you still have horses. They're just not pulling our vehicles around. Hi, everyone. My name is Rob Kramer. I am the Director of Services at CIT. I guess when I think of the metaverse, the word that comes to my mind is the Matrix. I think back to the old movie The Matrix and people living inside of a virtual world.
Nice. That is so good. And obviously, you're joined, as always, by Kelsey and myself, Ariel, your marketing, marketing masters.
Marvelous marketing masters.
Marketing masters. I love it. Awesome. And today on our Tech for Business podcast, we're doing something a little bit different. We're giving you an inside look to our leadership meeting discussing the metaverse, maybe at CIT. So before we jump in, I'd like to give us a chance to just level set. And I'm going to throw this to Rob and ask, what is the metaverse?
So in simple, I guess the simplest terms I can put it in, the metaverse is a way to interact virtually with your coworkers, your peers, using avatars. So you get a sense of, people can have a custom avatar. You kind of can model it after yourself if you want. It gives you a way to kind of interact with people, kind of like we used to in the old days, before the pandemic, where you actually physically met in person and got to shake hands and say hi to people. In the metaverse, you can be in a room. You can see individuals as you turn around with your virtual reality goggles on or whatever. You can see the different aspects of the room. You can see the individuals, where they're sitting, who they're talking to, what's going on. So it gives you the sense that you're in together in one place, even though you're geographically dispersed. And so as we're opening up our environments, our businesses to teams that are all over the world, it gives you the opportunity to still interact on a little bit more personal basis.
Thanks. Thank you for that. I just really want to get a quick, almost like a temperature check. How many of you are for this? Like, who's in it? Scott's like, yes, I'm jumping in. Kyle's like, for sure. Tara, that's it? Are we pretty split?
Yeah, I'm on the fence. There
Okay.
are pros and cons to it. I like the idea of having that as an option. I think it opens up a new world of possibilities for us. But as somebody who is naturally a bit of an introvert, I don't necessarily like being around people a lot. I get burnt out when I'm in a lot of personal interactions. But at the same time, I feel that we have missed some of that team building, some of the camaraderie that comes with being in person. And I feel like it's harder to pull teams together in a cohesive manner and build that sense of community. I'm hopeful that the metaverse can help correct that, but I'm taking a wait and see attitude.
Yeah. Well, so Todd and Nate, you seem like you're on the no side, and I'm curious a little bit why, and maybe you can go into what would have to change for you to say yes.
Go ahead, Nate.
I guess for me, some of the biggest things is while I don't necessarily disagree with things like, virtual reality, augmented reality, stuff like that. For me personally, the last thing I want to do is strap something over my face and sit in a meeting all day, right? And it's already. I love working at home, right? But there is a disconnection already to some of the teams in that component. I would never force anyone back into the office, but to then take that even a step further and start throwing goggles over my face, I just only see it exasperating the disconnect that I would have, with my team. And then a couple other things. I have some privacy concerns. I have concerns about the company that's running it. Right, I'm not a big social media guy in the first place, but so I've got a lot of different reasons. But I love the concept of using technology to supplement some of this kind of stuff. So again, the full metaverse is not appealing to me personally.
Yeah, and to tail off of that, I'll kind of try to bridge the gap a little bit. I'm kind of completely in the middle. I see a lot of possibilities for the future. My possibilities for the future would be less metaverse, but more conceptual of what virtual reality is as a whole. But then I do have some negatives where I think there are some significant barriers to entry, like Nate said, is what that looks like, right? We already have individuals that don't like being on camera. So when you're using video as an example, what is going to make that individual be like, oh, that's fine, I'll just use an avatar, so now I'm comfortable? I would guess that line is probably blurred at best and probably still the same, as I don't really want to do that. And then again, I to Nate's point is I think the equipment currently is a little cumbersome. So I don't look at that and go, boy, I'd really love to wear an Oculus for several hours.
One of the things actually that came to mind is I don't think this is really a new concept either. So we're hearing a lot about this term, but now that you said the word avatar, it actually makes me go think of the actual movie, The Avatar, right? Where they're sitting there, they're humans are sitting there in these little containers and whatnot, and they're wearing all, this big suit or whatever, and they're interacting with these avatar, this alternate world, right? And then that was, gosh, when did that come out? Almost 15 years ago or something like that now. So
Yeah.
You could get Kyle on a rant about the Avatar.
I can actually relate it a little bit differently. I've been playing EverQuest for since 2001. And I have an avatar in that game, right? I run around as a different character, but I'm still talking and chatting and interacting with other people, and mostly, people I know. I tend to play with friends or coworkers that I've had over the years, and so taking that a step further and putting that into a goggle where I can actually look around rather than see it on a screen is kind of the next natural step, and making that avatar more personalized, looking more like me, and then interacting with other people in a work environment. To me, it's a natural progression, and it does provide some interesting opportunities for the future. Again, though, I am just concerned that as a society, we're disconnecting from each other, and we're losing that sense of interaction. People think that I'm behind the screen, I can say anything I want. I have this kind of this buffer that in reality, if they were face to face, they would never do certain things because they feel more personal responsibility, I think.
Did you buy some real estate in EverQuest, Rob?
I did not, and I never will.
It's so interesting bringing up the video games and this natural progression. So I know that Scott and Tara and Kyle kind of mentioned, like, yes, I'm all for it. So for a business, what could the metaverse mean? How would you implement it? I mean, what do you three see this going into?
I can start with that. I mean, again, to kind of qualify. So, again, I look at it and say, okay, virtual reality side of it. I mean, I'm not going to focus on Meta, the company side of it. I can definitely allude to they got some of their own privacy challenges going on there. But in the conceptual side of it, should it be something that should be considered to go through? I think absolutely yes, because there's a lot of use cases, not for every meeting, but certain meetings where it's conducive on, say, a product demonstration side of that. Think of a workspace now so that you could be virtually transport into the conceptual design itself of a business layout, for example, of say a new conference room design, or the new layout of your office space, that you could actually virtually walk through that. So I think depending on industry, maybe you're a manufacturer and you want to virtually have them be able to see and hold, through that interaction, the actual part that you would manufacture, or to sit into the car that you potentially would be purchasing in a virtual manner. So you're more engulfed into the experience side of that without actually having to drive or be transported there. Sometimes you could be, an airplane away that you wouldn't necessarily have to be. Maybe you tour a conference center that you're looking to hold a conference in, but you don't have to make the trip. I know people did this with homes, home sellers certainly doing that, the virtual tour sides of it. So there's a lot of ways, but getting that level of engagement side of it are the ways that I think it's very powerful. Augmented reality, I think, is the other side of it. And Nate, you mentioned that. I think that has, even more potential than actually getting into the full VR in a lot of cases side of it. I know it's being leveraged in auto repair. I've read on those where they're using goggles that actually show them the engine and give them the exact part, and speed those up by an hour and a half repairs down to 20 minutes. Some ridiculous efficiencies gains with that through augmented reality. Those are things that I think are just starting to come as they get better with the glasses and those fit side of it. I think there's some tremendous use cases for where these technologies go. Having a meeting to shake and do an avatar, no, that I don't necessarily think, but I think there's particular use cases where it comes in there.
Well, I'd love to hear a little bit. I know that we have a couple people who are chomping at the bit to share, but we have some who have not yet. And I'm so curious, Tara, maybe your world being in marketing and what that might mean for a business or a company. I'm so curious as to what your thoughts are.
Yeah, thank you, Ariel. I was just thinking about that when I mentioned the word association of endless possibilities. So us in marketing, we're always like the creative, like, oh my gosh, how could we brand this virtual reality with our logos? Maybe as our partners that we work with, they're coming out with new products and services. And what does that environment look like if we were to hold an event together? Kyle had mentioned for us to maybe like virtually see a space. So we are planning our tech fair that we have coming up in 2023, and we've got a place down in Minneapolis. Like, if we weren't able to travel down for that, how could we have utilized that to see the space and be like, yep, that's perfect, we can set up tables here, so on and so forth. So I know sometimes we on the creative side are always like, yes, let's go. But we have learned just with our arm of cybersecurity of, okay, let's take a little bit back. And I know this is where Nate and Todd's passion comes in of, great, we can put that in motion, but how do we make sure that we're keeping everything secure? But I'm super excited because, like I mentioned, with a lot of our partners, they're on some of the forefront too. We have Microsoft Verkada with our physical security, that there's multitude of ways that we could showcase a lot of their technology. But I see Todd, he wants to talk cybersecurity.
No, by all means, Scott should have a chance too. The only thing that I was going to add was basically exactly what you mentioned. I was going to say the events, I think, has got a great possibility where you currently are in person or you're doing via video, and most people, when they come in through video, they typically don't have it on and they're not terribly engaged. And I think this would be a potential area where you would get the augmentative. Sorry to use that word over again, but somebody sent it, so now said it, so it's stuck in my head. But potentially that gets you a deeper engagement than you would get through video. So I think there's a possibility that you'd get a big uptick there. And then I think another area that potentially would be really neat would be where you could see onboarding. Nate had mentioned how you could find ways to be remote still, but you could still get together if you were uncomfortable with being on video. Maybe something like an avatar would help bridge the gap there.
One when I think about this, I think about it not so much in, yes, like Kyle said, day-to-day business operation. My day-to-day business meetings are not going to involve any kind of a headset, right? And so in the near term, and you know what Facebook is doing and what early adopters are doing is exactly that, right? It's early adopters. There's lots of concerns to try to address. I look at this through the lens of long-term, ubiquitous. This is everywhere in a place where we can use computer modeling to ultimately make the world a better place, right? And so, are there healthcare applications where computer modeling can give us healthcare outcomes? Is there computer modeling where we can do testing in a computer model versus on an animal, right? Those kinds of things are really interesting to me. To look that far out, where we can ultimately, do some really great things with the ability to model like we've never been able to do before.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm gonna just click back.
Go for it.
Kyle and Todd both called out that, again, while I'm against, the kind of the true metaverse feel that, is the title of this podcast or whatever, but the augmented reality, I think, is a wonderful thing. I think there's tons of applications. And you said something about Verkada and Microsoft, that starts to bring a couple items into my mind. So, for example, I'm just thinking, hypothetically, Verkada, it has the ability to share out a map to a floor plan with all the cameras. Recent news, right? There's been some school shootings and whatnot. Imagine if now you had a police officer being able to wear some type of, virtual reality with the floor plan, being able to see, I can see the camera, I can see everything as I'm walking down, hallways. That could be a really, really powerful application of something like this. You take it into, manufacturing. We've talking about how going from a floor plan with measuring tapes to just look at the part and start working on it. And even then taking it into a technology standpoint, right, is oftentimes we have to take a call with a vendor while we're in a server room. How powerful could it be to say, we know that we need to take all this hardware apart, and the vendor's on the other side just saying, see these bolts here, or these cables, unplug them, do what we need to do. It better supports us, but then it better supports you as well, right? It could be wildly powerful. That's the stuff that I'm super excited for. So.
And the modeling can actually model the outcome. That's the really cool part. It's one thing to show you, okay, well, here's the part, but here's what happens if you put it in the, in the piece of equipment. Here's what happens if you plug this in or unplug this, right? To me, that's the next level of this, right?
Yeah, one of the things sorry, Robbie, go ahead.
No, what I was going to say is one of the things I'm hearing kind of as a reoccurring theme is there are specific situations where we're all saying that we see an advantage and a potential for this technology, but I don't know that anybody's really said, I see everybody walking around, all day with these headsets on and spending, 8-10 hours a day working with these things. We see them in very specific situations being a benefit. And that's kind of the reoccurring theme I'm hearing here.
Yeah, it's the right tool for the right job. I mean, I think you look at where online meetings fit, when in-person meetings are best. I mean, it kind of allows those bridge sides with it. I know that, again, we'll call it Meta, just the company side of it. They do show kind of that use case in the school, for example, in a history lesson side where they bring the kids back and they're actually walking around woolly mammoths on those types of things. Side with it, again, I think that's another, application base where not the whole class are they in there, but at a certain point you put the goggles on, they could be transported to visually experience a time in history, to maybe witness, Normandy, for example. I mean, if you took the graphics of all that and brought it in of what you see in, like, Saving Private Ryan, but you're on the beach in Normandy as a witness seeing it, you're going to have a whole new appreciation of that history versus just reading it in the book. Yeah, but you would definitely remember it. I think human beings are very visual, and you can learn so much through a visual experience side of it, and you bring in all those other senses into those areas with the sound and the close visuals and being able to see, and experience that in a more personal way, I think there's a tremendous learning experience that could be had for all applications, levels of training.
So I what I'm hearing is a lot of there's a lot of good that can come from this. There's a lot of opportunities, but I'm gonna bring it back to CIT and what we do here. I mean, are you all saying yes to this? I mean, how would you implement this with what we do, or are you all swinging to the other side of the fence and saying no? I mean, what does it look like for CIT?
I would actually love to have some of this technology in place as we're onboarding employees who are in, geographically dispersed locations, where you could walk through the office and show them the office at CIT, and they could actually experience it through your eyes, your headset. I think that'd be a cool application of it. Give them a kind of a personal tour type of thing.
So just to kind of circle back to how that would go is what typically happens for CIT as we start to come up with new tools, new concepts, new whatever, is it usually starts in kind of a brainstorming session. And we've started to do that a little bit in this meeting, right? So we're going, Kyle's got this vision, it could be this, it could be that. And Scott's going, well, what if we did this over here? And we're talking about potential areas of training and whatnot. And all those are fantastic ideas. The next step typically for us is we would test it. So we would go, this is what we think it looks like. And now we're going to take a small subset of individuals and go, all right, let's see if we can actually make that work. And that could be something like, let's see if we can make this work in a meeting. I think we had a lot of conversations where we've already kind of overlapped a little bit of virtual, a little bit of augmentative reality. And I think that's a valid comment, because I think we would potentially tweak it as we were going. So we would jump in and we'd say, all right, let's do augmentative reality in the training situation, right? Nate mentioned it. You go out to a customer site and we're working on something. Having a second set of eyes that would be able to look at exactly what you're looking at would be tremendous. Or having a playbook come up right in front of your eyes as you're working on something. I used to work in manufacturing. It was one of the dreams that I had, was I could have a blueprint of something as I was making it, and I could look down at the product and see exactly how it went together live. I didn't need to reference anything. It was right at my fingertips and eyeballs. But anyways, getting back to it, as we were going through the let's figure this out, then of course the people like Nate and myself would go back and go, all right, whoa, let's slow this down a little bit. How are we protecting the data? How are we gathering it? What are we gathering it? Where are we going to store it? What does it look like? Et cetera, et cetera. So all of those things start to come together as you go, what are we actually doing here and what does it look like? And then the last step that I would add on there is if it goes really, really well, then we would come back and go, hey, this is really cool. I bet our customers would love to know this too.
Yeah, the one thing I would just kind of write off of Todd there about the privacy stuff is, my main concerns there is just, are you working in somewhere like, where you have the regulations like GDPR, CCPA, the healthcare industry, right? Are you communicating, PII, PHI, personally identifiable information, personal health info, but are you taking that data and shipping it to another company that you don't have control over? That's the concern that I really have when you start getting into healthcare. So, but yeah, otherwise for CIT, Rob, I think a little office tour would be great, right? Or maybe just meeting up with some of your other coworkers, just for whatever. I know some of our teams like to do Dungeons and Dragons together, right? But just being able to get together, and that would be a great use case for the avatars, right? You got a lot of IT people here that love playing games together. So
you mean there's more of an application than just all putting our credit cards down on the smart table and having it figure out how the bill splits?
I like it.
Remember that,
Yeah,
right? You kind of came and went. It was novelty. There's more applications here than that, right?
Yeah, I think that became Apple, Google Pay,
Right.
and Venmo. Essentially kind of eliminated that. But I mean, I think as it stands today, though, it doesn't feel like we have the transcending application of it yet. I mean, again, while Meta has the Oculus, and I think it's a nice product, it does appear to be more of a consumer product to me. Requires a personal Facebook account and these other sides. I mean, it doesn't feel like something I would say bring it into the business environment. I think we're still waiting on, the Apple glasses, the Microsoft glasses, something that has, something that you could federate into business cards, and you have the controls and the other things that Nate's referencing can be set because it has more, corporate federation, and you can have then corporate governance and other rules and regulatory sides of it. If we had everybody using their personal Facebook side of it, I mean, it would just be very, I think, awkward. Is the only thing I kind of come up with it. We're right there on the cusp of that. I think the processors and the technology side is really close. I know that I've read like the Apple glasses are right there, but they're challenged. I know Google went down that, and Google said the same thing, that they felt it's close but not there. So I think within the next number of years side of it, you're going to see, be able to get your prescription glasses and be able to do things that will, I think, allow us to do a lot more in a lot more natural form, similar like we're interacting with the phones and the other sides of it. I think it's close.
Yeah. So, we got a lot of like internal and onboarding and things like that. And I know, Tara, you're working so much with vendors you had mentioned before. I mean, what does that look like for CIT to implement this? Or what happens when the vendors bring this idea? How do we move forward with that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, with our top vendors, it's kind of our due diligence as an IT provider is to kind of be on the cusp of this technology and vet it out before we bring this to our customers. So I think that's one of the great things about CIT is that we have such strong relationship with our partners that we can have those conversations and really determine like, yep, this is going to be a good fit. Let's make sure we've got kind of everything on board and then bring that to light to customers. One of the things too, we have at CIT is an advisory board. So we do like to bring in customers on a yearly basis and kind of throw some stuff at them and just kind of get their reaction to say, is this of interest to you? What if there was these possibilities? So we have that coming up, that we're going to get that scheduled. And it's always intriguing just to kind of get their thoughts, because we do have so many of our customers in different industries. So this metaverse is going to be applicable to them, maybe not as quickly as some of the other ones where we might have some slow adopters, which is fine because we're not here saying you have to do this today, because we need to get in there and test it. But I know us on the marketing team will raise our hand and be like, I would love to try it. Can we do this? We'll test it out and see it. So if we're going to start this at CIT, we're ready and we can do that. I know you guys had mentioned kind of various things, even with onboarding. We do a lot too of communication, not only to our customers, but our employees at CIT. So we have our state of the company meetings, and what would that look like in the metaverse with all of us joining at that, hanging out. Maybe somebody put in the chat of like, we're all on a nature walk. Maybe we're all walking in nature and we're talking about our goals. I don't know. That's why I said like, endless possibilities. I'm like, how can I brand this wall? Can I throw up some like quotes that we have maybe within a podcast? Like, this is where I'm like, my wheels are spinning and I'm like, okay, let's go. So just super excited.
I have one last thing about marketing. So as companies shifted to all their virtual expos or, customer engagements, I attended one about 2 years ago. That was a virtual expo. You could go click on the stairs, walk upstairs, right? That could be a great application. I know at CIT, we have our tech fair every year, invite customers. And, but for those that, maybe live out of state and maybe can't get here, that could be a great opportunity, right? Come join us with all of the rest of us.
I want to know who the individual is going to be that wears the camera hat that walks around for those people to see the full expo in that three-dimensional looking where you want type of mode.
Yeah.
I nominate you, Rob.
I spent too much time talking.
Sounds like you just volunteered yourself.
I love it. I love it. Awesome. Well, I'm gonna open it up for just real quick, your closing statements. Just anything that you want to share that you didn't get to share. I think we definitely got some podcast ideas in the future. I know I'm interested. I hope our listeners are interested. This was a great conversation, but anything anyone wants to share here at the end.
Last thing I have is in the near term here, if these environments, if this early stage of things can focus on usability versus how it looks, right? Because it's this cartoony kind of world right now, and I think that turns everybody off. And so if it can, functionality can increase and all of that other stuff can take a backseat, I think it'll start to gain more traction.
Yeah, I'll tally off of that as we're wrapping up. Again, going back to the security compliance concerns that come with it, is it will be interesting to see how the laws try to keep up with this. So as Scott just mentioned or alluded to, is as you start looking at people that look like real people, if you will, the matrixy kind of stuff, there is compliance concerns that comes with it. Because as Nate mentioned, the PHI level, the health information, the identifiable information, that is information that suddenly becomes available to everybody. And is that what you're really looking for? So those will be concerns that just naturally come through it. Things will catch up. It just takes a little bit of time. Law tends to lag a little bit behind technology, as we've seen throughout the years.
And I think technology is, like I said, it's on the cusp. We're going to see some products coming out in the next upcoming years, I think, that are going to really, I think, bring some of the ultimate promises to where this is at. I mean, right now, I think it's pretty niche. Definitely in the business environment for sure. But consumer products tend to drive ultimately business side with it, and I think it's. I'm glad there's been a lot of advancements. I had some early stuff. I mean, my Oculus, the Quest 2 is far, far better than the first. As I saw, I'm very impressed with capabilities where that's gone. That's encouraging. So I think there's great things to come.
I think of a scene from a recent movie that kind of brings us together for me, and that's in Avengers Endgame, when they're meeting and you see the actual people, even though they're all over the universe, but they're actual images of them interacting in real time through a conference. And when we can get to something like that, where you can actually have that type of real time interaction with what otherwise would appear to be the actual individual, I think that's where it kind of brings us back home to the idea of face-to-face meetings, and you start to reconnect a little bit more than you do to these cartoony looking avatars.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. Well, gosh, this has brought up so many interesting things, interesting questions. I imagine this sparked a lot of thoughts for me, for our listeners, and I'm curious if our listeners would be interested in meeting in the metaverse or interested in learning more about how to implement this. If you have any questions, comments, please feel free to reach out to us at cit-net.com/podcast or send us an email at info@cit-net.com. Thank you, Kyle, Todd, Tara, Nate, Scott, and Rob for joining Kelsey and myself today, and we'll be back next week with an all-new episode.